Welcome back to this Django tutorial series, and previously we have been able to look at the manual way of working with forms in Django. Anytime there's a need for you to get entries or valid value from your user, then you use your Django form. But since Django is a framework, it's already come pre-built with some functionalities that we are going to be learning how to use in this section of the tutorial. So let's jump into it. Of course, we are still going to be using our formal source code, and what you just need to do is just go your source vmv just to start your virtual environment. Activate. Okay, script should come before script. Activate script. Activate. Yes, so let's clean our interface and we start. Of course, let's not start, let's just start the virtual environment. Now when you're working with the built-in forms of Django, what you need to do is to come into your application. Don't forget that we are currently working with the contact us application, in the sense that we want the student to be able to reach out to us, contact us, and for them to submit their queries to us. So let's just run our application if it's still working. Manage.py to be sure that our last update was still working fine, just for confirmation's sake and to be on a safer side when we continue developing. Now we can see that we still have our application. So if you navigate to contact us, you realize that we still have the form in there. So I'll just zoom. Okay, so we still have the form in here. So we are going to be looking at the built-in Django functionality, Django form functionality. So you can see in here that we have the contact us application. So what you just need to do is just create a file called forms. Sorry about that. So create a file called forms. Very simple to work with. So once you create the forms file, so then what you just need to do is from Django, which is the framework, import forms, and you create a class and give the name of the form to it. So for our case, let's call it contact form, and we are going to be passing forms as a parameter. Of course, it should be form. Yes, so in this class you are going to be defining the attributes, like the values you want to get from the user. And don't forget that from our application we're actually dealing with first full name first. So then let's just go and follow the same trend. We say full underscore name, which will be equals to forms, which you have imported from Django forms. And from forms, just like you have your models, of course don't forget we have looked at models previously, where you can define the feed name, the feed uh, data type, and the likes. So if you look at student management, you see different types of models that we have looked at before. We have looked at the character feed, we have looked at text feed, we have looked at the character integer feed, email feed, and so on and so forth. So the same thing is what we are going to be applying here, but instead of us to have models dot data type, you are going to be having form dot the data type. So then you go to your forms and you do character fit, since your full name is going to be a character, and in here you can pass some attributes into it. So you can pass the label. Of course you will see it in action later. So let's just pass the label of our full name. Let's just give it a description of full name. Yes, and since it is a character feed, you should set the maximum length. It's always a good idea. Let's just set to the maximum length of 254. And we want the user to we want it to be required, just like your HTML. Very, very easy. So we want it to be required. So let's see this in action. We have defined the form feed, and the feed we are getting from the user is the full name. We have defined the full name that it is going to be taking characters, and we set the label to be full name, your full name, and the maximum length. And we want some validation of, we want it to be required. That means the user cannot submit without them filling in those details. So now that we have that, all you just need to do is, I want us to come to our views inside the same applications. Let me close this to that we have a cleaner interface. Yeah, our contact us application. For reference sake, I will just comment this out so that when I push the code to GitHub, you can be able to check it and read through. Okay, this is the manual way. I can just put a comment of manual method of working with forms. Manual method of working with forms. So now let's look at the Django built in form functionality. So what you just need to do now is just say the request that is being passed to this function request dot method. Let's see if it is a post method. Of course, don't forget, when you want to pass something to the server, you use post. But when you want to get something from the server, you use get. So if it is a post method, let's just pass for now. Else, we want to just return the form. So when the user is navigating to the form URL, at that point, the request method is a get, because it's trying to get something from the server. But at the time when the user enters the details of the form and submit, at that point it becomes post. So this will handle when the user submit the form, and this will handle when the user navigates to the form field. So at the navigation point, I just want to say form. Of course, I need to import that form that I've created. So I will say, so to import the form that I've created, I will just say from the current directory. Anytime you see dots, it means the current directory. So I want to import forms from the current directory. I want to import my contact form that I have created. Don't forget, I created the contact form in here. So that is the same form I want to use here. So I've imported the contact form. Then I can now assign it. So I'll then go ahead and say form is equals to contact form, which is going to be a method 2. Now that we have defined the contact form, you can now return the render, just like we have been doing, and the render will take requests. And as the second parameter, we define the URL. So I'll just go ahead to copy the URL of this. So it's just what we have been doing. You can see that inside template we have folder contact us, and inside that folder contact us we have contact.html, we have sources.html. So what you just need to do now is to define the URL here, which will be inside contact us folder, and inside that we have the contact.html. So let's see how it goes for now, if the get will actually work. Now you can see that we have defined the form, we have set it to the view. Now let us go and work on it at the template level. So you need to come to the contact.html. So you need to come to the contact.html. Now that we have in here, instead of you to be defining label, the input, the button, once again, what I'll just do is I'll just comment this out. So that you can be able to reference it. So this is the manual method. So I'll come underneath it, say built-in. Of course, it's not automatic because you need to still do some things. Built-in Django functionality. Now that I have that define, then I can go ahead to define my form again. Don't forget your CSRF token, cross-site request boundary token. Very important to prevent hackers from gaining access to your site. So now that we have this, instead of us to be writing label input like I've said the other time, all you just need to do is just define a curly braces 2, and in there just define form. Just define form, and if I save it now, oh, I can't wait to see the magic. It will still be working exactly the same. So, and anytime you set your form, you should always remember to set your button. Very, very important. And that button automatically acts as a default submit functionality. So if you come to these views, of course, we are rendering the page at the point when the user navigate to the page as a get request, but we are not passing this form that we define. That is the problem. So we go ahead and define it. So we say form, and this will be form. So if you save now, you should have it on your page. And now you can see that we have your full name, which is the label that we define, and we also have the input field. Now if you look at it through this inspect element, by the time you check this div, you see that this is the label, and you see that this is required. This is required, and the maximum length is 254 based on the properties that we define in here. So if I change the label here to enter your full name, and I save. If I go back, you see that it will have changed the label to enter your full name, and that is the inbuilt functionality of Django form. Now I just want to space this now temporarily. I come to this contact.html. Let me just break. So if I save it now and I come ahead to see just to space. Now the beauty of this is that the validation that you're adding is not just front end based or template based, but it's server based. So if I remove this now, and I remove the required, because even, let me refresh now. If I refresh it and I try to submit, it will tell me that this feed is required. Let me just cancel this. You can say me, please fill out this feed because it is required. So if I just come here and I remove that required from it, so, and I just click on submit, it will tell me that it's return none. So of course it will not submit. Because the validation is server side and not just front end based. So moving forward, let's see how to break our stuff down. Let's see how to break it down. So if you come into your contact.html, you should know that you can split it. You can break it down and maybe sometimes display an error message and some other stuff. So if you just want to render it the way it comes from the forms.py, you can just use this. But sometimes you might want to break it down. Maybe you have some class, you have your HTML, you can just break it down like this. Let me just comment out this. And you can break it down. Maybe you want to have a div. Maybe you want to have a div with class of, maybe let me call it input feed. Maybe you want to style it, and at the point when the user enter something that has error, you want to display the error, and if it does not have error, you want to just walk through it. So let's say you want to, like, based on the condition of, okay, if it have error, display this class. If it does not have error, display this class. So all you just need to do is just do the curly braces with the percentage, and you can render an if statement here to say if form dot the name of the form, which is full name in this case, full name dot errors. That means if it has errors, then I can go ahead to maybe add a class of errors, and I end my, don't forget that when you're writing Python code, you use the curly braces and percentage, and don't forget when you start if, you should end it. So this class will only be attached if I have errors in the feed. So if I want to render the feed now, I can then use this double curly braces like I used previously, like I used in here previously. I will then say that form dot full name, and here is my label tag, and after the label, I want to also display the input feed. The input feed can then be form dot full name. So I will then possibly, I have some errors I want to display. I will then display the errors. To be errors. So now you should go ahead now and display the errors, but I want us to update these views so that when the user posts something, I want to be able to write a function here and also define an error message in here. So if I don't want it to take a default error message, then all I just need to do is just come in here. Forget that I have set two major conditions of maximum length of 254 and required to be true. So let me just see. So you can add another attribute of error messages and I'll set that to be equals to, don't forget I've set two conditions. The first one is it is required, the second one is that the maximum length should be 254. So I'll set the required, so just a descriptive message saying, instead of to just say this form is required, something like that, I can just put the error message of full name is required. And for the second one of maximum length, I can then set the maximum if the user enter. So the name of the validation is what you use. You can see that in here when I was setting the required, I use the name of the validation, which is this required, and this here to maximum length, I use the name of the validation, so maximum length, and I'll set that to maybe full name characters if it exceeds the maximum length is too long. So I can set that. So if so, but you should take note of the fact that this required, you can decide to leave it because by default it is always true. So except you want to set the required to false, that is most of the time when you use it. But those, just to know that it exists, that is why I am adding it. So now that we have worked on that, we save. Let us now go ahead to update our views of when the user sent a submit request or a post request. So all you just need to do in there is to now say, okay, when the user submit a post request, that means I'm getting a form. So I'll then say form is equals to the contact form that I've imported earlier. This contact form that I've imported earlier, I'll then say form is equal to the contact form, and I'll get whatever the user pass into the form from request.post. And just like we did the other time where we validated our input feed manually, now we're going to be validating the input feed using the built-in Django validation. So now what you now need to do is now say if form dot if it's valid, that is the validation, that is the inbuilt validation. If it is valid, then you should now go ahead to get the details by saying, let's say the contacts that the user enter is equal to the contact us form. Valid means all conditions are met. We should save it to save to database, and saving to database requires that we add our model, we update the model. Let me just put pass here for now. Add our model, update the model, and then push it to the database. So after we have saved to the database, we can now, just like we are doing here, we can now redirect. Of course, for now, let me just print it. I'll just print form dot cleaned data. That means the validated input. This is going to be returning a dictionary key value pair. The key will be the name that you have given to the input, and the value will be the value that the user pass into the input. But for now, let's see this in action. And after that has been done, let's, just like we are doing here, we then redirect to the message sent feed. Message sent feed. Message sent feeds. Don't forget Python is an indented code, so you should be careful of, you should pay attention to the indentation. So if I save it now, and I go back to my form feed, I refresh. If I try to submit now, of course feed is required, so let me remove this required, and I try to submit. Alright, so let's just make this return to be callable by default. Refresh this now. You can see now that I'm getting the error. So the problem before was that at the point when the request is post, it come in here, and if the form is not valid, it is not return any other thing. But if the form is not post, then even if the form is not post, it will still return the form. So but at the point when it's valid, then it will not get to this point again. It will return the redirect message. So now if you can see that I have the error feed now, which is required. So let's test the maximum length in action. The maximum length, don't forget that we have set it to 254. So let me just set the maximum length to 10 for testing sake. Of course, a typical full name will be more than 10 characters. So but for now, let's test 10 in action. So if I come in here and I refresh, yes, so now I remove the required first to see it in action, and I submit. See that full name is required. I got the error message. Now if I also, now I've set the maximum length to be 10, so let me now set more than 10 characters. Of course, because it is setting in here, I will remove this maximum length too manually. So if I set more than 10 and I submit, you see that I'm getting full name characters is too long. So meaning that I'm getting my label. Let's go back, let's switch in here. So if you see these views, I'm getting the label, which is this. I'm getting the input feed, which is this, and I'm getting the message error message, which is this. So now that we have been able to see that, let's see how to, of course, you'll have seen some form feeds that some websites, so to say, that when there's an error, they they can make this input feed to be red. They can make it to be red, and so that you can know that something is not fine at that point. So what we are going to be doing is that we are going to be adding a CSS static file before we now go ahead to add the model and run the database. So let's see how to deal with static files. And of course, this is just like a revision of working with static files. So now what we are going to be doing is we are going to be coming to our file explorer. So we come to our file explorer under this contact docs exactly, which is the application we are working, which is the application that we are currently working with. We're going to come into this contact us, and inside this contact us, let's create a folder called static. Let's create a folder called static, and inside the static file, we are going to be having the name of our application so that we'll be able to differentiate from a static file that's inside contact us application from static file that is inside model and data application and or student management application. So I am going to call this contact us, and in here I'll define the style to be style.css just to conditionally render the template. So I am going to be having some form here, so don't forget that inside this place I have my inside my templates, the contact. Okay, I have it open here. I have defined a feed called input feed. So I'll start with that. Sorry, I've defined a class called input feed. So I'll start with that class by saying class input feed, and I'll set a margin bottom of, let me say, 1 rem. And for the class input feed, anything that is the label under the class input feed, and also the class input feed and the input feed that is under the class. Don't forget that the input feed is like a div that is wrapping the label, wrapping the input feed, and also the error message. So I'll display this as a block, and then of course, if you look at this place, if I pick my cursor, I put it here, you can see that I have a class of error list. So this is what I'm going to be using to style my error message. So that's where I'm getting the class from. So class error list, and it's an unordered list. So I'll set the list type to be none. I'll set the list type to be none, and the color of the text so that the user can know it is an error message to red. And I can also set some margin around it to be 0.3 rem, top and bottom, and 0 right and left. So padding, I don't want any padding so that it starts from the right edge. And now if you look at it, when I render my templates, I've conditionally set an error class. If there's no error, this, I don't know if it is too small. If there's no error, this particular error class will not be attached, because when you look at our code again, you realize the fact that I am only adding this errors class at the point when the particular feed has error. So that is when it will display this. It will add this error class. Otherwise, it will only have this input feed. So At the point when there's an error, this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be saying dot errors. So at the point when the errors class is attached, dot errors class errors. No, I should have double R, not triple R. Class error and input field under class error, so that user can know that if there's a error here. I'm going to set that to dark red. Yeah, set the border color to dark red and also set the background color to red so that the user can know. And of course the labels too. At the point when it is an error, the labels too can also take color red. We are going to be seeing all this in action very soon. And now that we have set our class, of course we have set our static file of css. Now what you now need to do is come back to this contacts.html. Because you are using a static file, css is a static file, you need to come above this your template file and then say Django should load a static file. You need to tell Django to static load static. So that means you are loading a css file. So you can then come in here and say, just like we learned in our HTML class, so you can then define the link of to be a style sheet, correctly spelled, and the href, which is the link, and I'm going to say it is static. It is static, and I'm going to say static. Yeah. So just delete this. Now all this intelligence I have them because of the fact that I have Django extension installed. So I am going to now define it as, of course you can see that I have static folder, and inside the folder I have contact us. So I'm going to say contact us slash style. Inside contact us I have slash style.css. So now that I have that, let's see if our static file will be loaded, and if it is not loaded we stop our application and restart again. Just come in here. Alright, so now that I have that, let me now remove the maximum length again, and I just go the way of more than 10 maximum length and I submit. Our static file is not attached yet, so the first solution is first to not found, not found. Okay, the first solution is to restart our run on our server. Now that we have restarted, let's check it again. Yes, you can see in here that we have our static file, so that user can, oh, this is an error. So at the point when I reload again, and let me say of course the user will not be able to go beyond, but let me say I remove this maximum length for now. So I set maximum length more than 10. If I submit again, because of that class we have added, you can see that the label is red, just for the user to know that. Because this might be too much for the user to pay, but for now I believe you get the point. You can attach the style based on your own HTML design or CSS design. So now that we have seen how to undo the errors, how to display the error using inbuilt Django functionality. Now what I will now want us to do now is let us see how to create a model and add the details to the database. But before we do that, I want us to add more fields. Of course, we are working with the contact us form. We expect to have a full name, a comment, and the like. So let's see how to add. Let's try and add more fields. So to add more fields, let's come to our form, our forms.py, before we now go ahead to push it to the database. Now that we have that, let us now say let's say okay, we want to get the level of the students forms dot this level can, let's say we have 100 level for year 1, 200 level for year 2, 300 level for year 3, and so on and so forth. So we are expecting integer feed, and this integer feed we have a label of, let me just say students number, no, let me say study level. Okay, so now of course you don't expect the level to be less than 100, so you set the minimum value to 100. You can see under validation in action. We have seen maximum length, we have seen required, which is true by default, and now we are seeing minimum value. That's under validation for your form that Django is giving you opportunity for you to leverage. Now we have maximum length, we also have maximum value for an integer feed. So let's say maximum value is 700, and now the comment goes here. Of course the user want to pass us comments, and we set that to be forms dot character feed, just like we work with our labels. And I can then call the label for this to be comments or query. Of course if you do not define this label, it will take the name of the feed from, and now of course you expect your comments to have not just be normal form feed or input feed. You want it to be a text area. To do that, you just need to set a widget of forms dot text area, so that we set the input feed as a text area. So we then set the maximum length to be 200. So now that we have that, of course it's a contact us form. The user should drop their email in case we want to respond. So let's set emails, and that will be forms dot email feed, and let's set the label. Of course by default this is required, even if you do not set it require. By default this is also required, even if you do not set it required. By default this will also be required. So let's just say school, or let me just say email address. So I bring this, of course let's save it and see it in action. So now that you have saved, if you come back to this your html contact.html, you realize the fact that we need to now duplicate this, and then instead of us having full name, which is this, we need to now have, of course email should come next. So we need to now have dot email dot errors dot email dot email dot email. So if you save it now, you realize the fact that you have the email feed. Now you can see that we have the email feed, we have the email feed, we have the email feed. But let's say you have 10 input entries of 10 form feeds. That means you need to repeat this for, you need to repeat it 10 times, which is not a viable solution, which is not an efficient solution. What you can do for simplicity's sake and for speed's sake is just to loop through the form element. Of course if I okay I again I'm going to comment this out, and to see all my forms in action I'm going to uncomment this. So if I save it, it will bring out all the forms feed. You can see full name, student, study level, comment, and the email. It arranges it based on the way or the format that I have in here. So let me say I want the email to come first before the level, then I just go this way and I save. So once I save, I come back in here, and I have my email. But I don't want it like that. What I want is that I want to still be able to attach this my class and this my errors. That is the problem there. So I comment this out, and what you can do for efficiency sake, for speed sake, is to your loop through your form. So to do that, I go the way of Django and I say for elements in form, for elements in form, then I'll come and copy one of these div, Of course, you can do it to remember to end your end your for and I have my loop. Of course, for every iteration to be element and it will display this. So the reason I'm doing that and I'm not using this is because I want to be able to attach this input feed. Otherwise, it will just take the default that Django is sending. So in order to add your own little modifications, changes, that's why we are doing this now. So what you now need to do in here is that you now define the input feed. The input feed will now be, instead of it to now have form.email.errors, now have elements.errors. Because at that point when, of course, the first one is full name, it will pick full name first, and so this will now be, instead of it to have, so this will now be full name.errors. The second time it will pick email, so it will now be emails.errors. I believe you get that. So we then go the way of element here again, and this will also be elements, so that even if you have 10, even if you have 15, if you have 500, it will still loop through and you still have your form well formatted. So if I save this now, I come in here and I refresh, you can see that my form is well formatted based on the classes I attach, and it display everything without any stress or without any. So if I click on submit now, of course it tell me that all the feeds are required. So let's say I remove the required attributes for each of the form feed. Of course, you can see that the errors class is not attached for now because there's no error for now. So I'm going to be removing the required for these two. I remove the required manually so that I test my 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 form, the ability of my form to respond to even server side validation. So I remove, of course, don't forget I told you that required is by default. So if you don't want it to be required, you can now set required for. So if I save this now, you can see all the forms pick up the error message form, the error message class, which is red, full name is required, this field is required, this field is, you can see that because I did not set my updated error message, you just pick this field is required, which is not descriptive. Like imagine full name is required, that one see the user can still relate and oh that's good, okay, but with this one, this field is required, that might not be a good error message. But of course you now know how to update that by coming to your forms and saying error message. So you can then come in here and add the attribute of error messages, and then say for the required attribute can then say email field is required. So if I save now, of course you can just do the same thing for minimum value, maximum value, maximum length, and so on and so forth. Now that I have that, I can then come in here and refresh, do the same thing again by removing the required, removing the required, removing the required, removing the required, and I save now. You can see full name is required, and now I have a more descriptive error message here of email feed is required. So you can then go ahead to replicate the same thing. Now let's now see how to, of course, sometimes the user will enter a wrong value or an unaccepted value. But now let's see, after the user have entered the right value, we should then push it to the database. And to do that, we have learned that already. So let's just see how it works by going to our model and creating the model. Now you can see, because when you are working in database, pushing your file to the database, pushing your record to the database, you need your model. So we can then come in here and define our model of contact us, and I go the way of models.model, just the way you define your form. You can see inside the form I have full name, I have I have email, I have label, I have comments. So I can then come in here and say the full name is models dot. Of course, you see that I define in it here as character feed. So here it should also be character feed. And I can, of course, anytime you define the character feed, you should define the maximum length. Otherwise, it will throw an error. Of course, let me just set this one to 100 now, because a typical finish should be more than 10 characters. So I then go with the same thing here. And the next one now is email, which is models dot email feed. I go the next one, which is level, and I go the way of models dot integer feed, and I go the way of comments, and then go the way of models dot text feed, because I'm accepting a significant number of entries from the user. Now that I have that, I can then go ahead to do what? Make my migration, migrate, and then update my database. So once I do that, then I can save the entries to the database. So but for now, before I run the migration, you can come to your views now, so that when the user have a correct entry or a validated entry, I can then execute this functionality of pushing to the database. But for now, if I push to the database before I run my migration, let me try to enter the right value from the user, and let me see the what are we getting in my console when I print this form dot clean data. Don't forget, this is an inbuilt Django functionality, so you should use that clean data. You should not say, okay, I want a wonderful data. No, you should use the clean data, because that is an inbuilt functionality. So I'll go the way of fake filler again. Fake filler is a Chrome extension that speed up your front-end development tasks, and sometimes you need to test form 100 times, 10 times, 500 times. So if you to be filling it every time by yourself, you can just use the fake filler to generate some random values for you, and here you are, very good to go. So if you submit now, your query has been sent, because the input feed is a validated input feed. So you can see in here that it's coming through to this place, saved the, of course I'll save the database, and it's printing. Now let me see what it's printing. You can see that it is printing a dictionary. A dictionary in Python is group of key value pairs entries. So I have my full name, the full name is this, the email is this, level is this. Of course, the level should not be 339, it should be 300 or 400. Comments, and I have some random values. So that means I'm getting my entries from the user. So now that I've confirmed that, I can then go ahead to run my migration, update it, so that I can be able to push record to the database. So I will close this now. I clear my console. Don't forget, your virtual environment should still be on. I can then say Python manage manage.py, and I say make migrations. Yes, I've made the migration. You can just go ahead to confirm. Okay, you can see models, ID, full name, email, level, comments. So if you are good with it, you can then go with the same command and say this time around migrate, and now you have a migration to the database. So if you want to confirm that, you can just use the link I gave you the other time, sqlite.vr.app, open it. That I still have my contact us form, which is ID, full name, email, level, comment, but I don't have any entry for now. So let us see how to add our entry. So now that we have that, so we can then go ahead. Now that we have run our migration, we can then go ahead to these views at the point when the user have entered a valid form entry. This is our validation. If this is not true, then the validation does not pass through, or is not the form. The user enters something that is not right, or something that does not go well. So now that we have created our model, instead of us to just print the message to the console, which will not persist after a long time. So what we now need to do is now say contact, and now say, of course, you need to import the model from the current directory, models, import, and what would we call the model again? Contact us. Import contact us. So I will then come in here and say contact is equals to contact us, and I define that as, of course, the field that you have defined, the full name. The full name is equals to form dot, don't forget I told you cleaned data is a dictionary, and I want to get the value of the key full. I wish I still have that in the console. Do I still? No, I've cleaned it. Okay, so we have seen it in action. You can just rewind the video and see what I've shown you before. And I go the way of email now. Same thing, I just copy for speed's sake. Email is this, wrap, and the key for email is email. And I go the way of the next one now is level, and I Ctrl V again, and I get the value of the key level. And I also go the way of comment again, and that again will be form dot clean data, and the key will be comment. So now that I have that, I have my contacts, and I can then say after that I should save to the database. To save the database, all you just need to do is call the function save. Very simple and easy. Call the function save, and now that I have called the function save to persist to the database, and after that it will redirect the user to the success page to see, oh, your query has been saved, your query has been sent, and we attend to you in the next 24 hours, as the case may be. Now that we have saved that, let us now go ahead to test our application. I go back to the form feed again. Sorry, I have not started my application, so I need to go ahead and say python manage.py, and I run my server. Now that I've run the server, I can then come back in here and run my contact us form. Now that I have my contact us, I go the way of fake filler again, the easy friend of the front-end developer. Now instead of having 343, I go the way of 400 level. So now that I have that, I can then go ahead to submit. So now that I've submitted, your query has been sent, which is good signal to the user of say, okay, thank you for receiving my query. I'll be expecting a response from you. So I can then come in here, refresh my page, and I resume viewing my SQL viewer. Cancel this. There's an error. Alright, let me just open the database itself. Okay, let me open the file again. Now I have file, I come to the contact us. You can see that the record that I've just finished adding now has been committed to the database, and that is it on how to work with form, both the manual way and using the inbuilt Django functionality. And of course, you can go ahead to add more if you go back to your using Django built-in functionality. And in the process, we learned how to work with validation, and subsequently, of course, you might want user to attach. Maybe they are facing an error. You are working with a coding school. Maybe they are facing an error and you want them to attach a file, attach a screenshot. You can just have a form feed that take file from the user, and that is what we are going to be looking at next. But for now, let's test our application again and enjoy it ourselves as a developer of the application, by testing it one more time. So now we have that. I go ahead and submit again, and boom, your query has been sent. I come again to my database, web viewer of the SQLite. I refresh again. If it's okay, now you see that I have that in my database, and that is it for that for now. So up next, we are going to be looking at how to work with files in Django, and we are not going to be looking at the manual way again. We are going to be making our life very easy by using the inbuilt Django functionality.